Hello, everyone, and welcome to the office hour for Alluxio 2.4. This is an office hour, so I encourage a lot of discussion, questions, anything you really want to ask about Alluxio, feel free. You can post the questions in the Slack channel on the link there. For the main topic of this office hour, we're going to go over some of the new features in the Alluxio version just released, which is 2.4. But feel free to ask questions about anything. So when we set out to kind of develop the version 2.4, we heard a lot of feedback from the community around some of the use cases that people have really been focusing on in 2.3, which were mostly around the cloud and hybrid cloud use cases. And from that feedback, we developed a few different features. The first of which is the Alluxio Data Orchestration Hub. This is a kind of a management console software which will help users manage their deployments a lot better, as well as connect different storages to their Alluxio clusters more easily. We've also greatly increased the number of supported deployment types and storage types. We'll get more into that later, and a lot of that effort actually was kind of driven by community members, and there was a lot of good collaboration with various members in the community who wanted to use different deployment environments or storage systems. The other focus area of 2.4 was just production readiness. We saw a lot of users struggle with journal scalability when using the new embedded journal. So we put in a major update there in order to better support the use cases we were seeing. And then finally, we put in a lot of new DevOps tools for monitoring and debugging clusters because we saw one of the main sources of frustration was I can't really see how the Alluxio cluster is doing, or when the Alluxio cluster is slowing down or performing slightly different than expected. It was difficult to get a handle on which area of the system the kind of operator should focus on. So now we'll go into each of these areas in a bit more detail. The first is the Alluxio Data Orchestration Hub. So this is a management console, and the main features that are available here are wizards that will help you connect to external storage. So kind of ways that will let you walk through the mounting of various under file systems. We've seen that this is kind of one of the bigger challenges, especially in more complex environments, like for example, a hybrid environment where your storage maybe is on-prem. You need to make sure certain ports are open, your VPCs are able to connect to your on-prem networks and things like that. And the wizard itself will just help you walk through the process, as well as help you troubleshoot if anything is wrong in any of the steps. The Alluxio Data Orchestration Hub also provides a lot of system monitoring tools, as well as ways to kind of update the configuration without having to do any manual work, like in a terminal, updating configuration files and things like that. So it is just a lot more convenient for the operator to kind of do day-to-day tasks that they may want on the entire cluster. And if you're interested in the Alluxio Data Orchestration Hub, I think we'll have a follow-up webinar that's mostly focused on this new feature. So keep an eye out for that. Next, I wanted to talk about the new integrations. And these integrations kind of allow Alluxio to be deployed in more environments, as well as connect to more different storage systems. The first of which is support for Java 11. This was something that we heard a lot from the community, and they had a lot of good reasons too. A lot of the compute frameworks that our users are using, like Presto and Spark, they're all moving towards versions that support Java 11, or in Presto SQL's case, versions that only use Java 11. And the main benefits of Java 11 for these compute frameworks is the improved like garbage collector, as well as leading to better performance. So in 2.4, Alluxio actually supports both Java 8 and 11 in the same tarball. So regardless of which environment you're using, that'll be able to work for you out of the box, and you don't need to, for example, choose a specific build or anything like that. So we expect kind of the Java 11 users to kind of increase compared to before everyone was kind of on Java 8. And we're really looking for the community's feedback on kind of how the Java 11 integration is going, whether there are cases where, for example, it's not tuned properly, things like that. The next integration is around Terraform for GCP. So in cloud environments, generally, it'll be useful for users to be able to spin up an Alluxio cluster in various cases. So if you think about if you just have like a bare metal machine, you could, for example, go and download the Alluxio tarball, unpack it yourself, and run it. But we've tried to make this process a lot easier by using Terraform scripts, which kind of take care of the entire cycle of deploying a system, as well as, for example, updating configurations or relaunching the cluster, things like that. So users can just go to the Terraform script and then submit the Terraform script to Google Cloud, and that will spin up, based on your recipe, a number of instances, and you'll have a ready-to-go Alluxio cluster. And if you ever wanted to kind of create the same cluster, you just submit the same script. And if you wanted to make some adjustments to, for example, the node sizes or certain configuration values, you just have to modify the Terraform script as opposed to going in and manually doing those changes on the instances themselves. Another new integration that we've had in 2.4 is improved support for Docker and Kubernetes. So Docker and Kubernetes environments have become increasingly popular within the community. I would say this is probably like the most popular way to deploy Alluxio, or like in terms of the growing number of users on Kubernetes with Docker. And we've made a lot of improvements in those areas. So for example, you'll be able to deploy your Docker image with certain users so that you'll be able to have the right authorization when you're running those Alluxio clusters. Another set of kind of integrations from the community is around the storage systems. And here in 2.4, we've gotten 2 new storage integrations for ADLS, which is the Azure Data Lake, and then also Ozone, which is an Apache project based off of HDFS, but basically an object store version using HDFS's data nodes. And all of these, like for the Docker improvements, the ADLS support, Ozone support, these were all kind of collaborations from the community, driven by members in the community who saw the need for these different integrations. And we've really seen like the feedback from the community be really helpful in terms of driving what new integrations we want and which new deployment frameworks we want to use Alluxio with. And then the last integration here is like a security-based integration. In this case, Alluxio 2.4 is able to work with HashiCorp Vault. HashiCorp Vault, you can think of it as a third-party, almost like a password manager, except for systems. So it allows users to store secrets in HashiCorp Vault, for example, your AWS credentials or like various authorization or authentication keys. And then the Alluxio system will make API calls to this third-party secret store. And that way, Alluxio doesn't actually need to know of any of these sensitive secrets. For example, you don't need to put the AWS key in the Alluxio mount properties or put it in your configuration files. It also gives the benefit of being able to manage all of those secrets in one place, which is HashiCorp Vault. So if you, for example, needed to revoke a credential because you no longer want users to be able to access that, you can just directly revoke that in that centralized store, and it'll propagate eventually to Alluxio, who will no longer be able to use that credential. It also helps users who have more strict security requirements around, for example, rotating keys every, let's say, a few weeks or a month. That way, they just need to do the rotation in HashiCorp Vault, and then Alluxio will automatically pick up the new rotated key. This really prevents, for example, one machine getting compromised later, and then that key still being relevant for a very long period of time to come. So those were kind of the new integrations of the system. Now I want to talk about some of the stability and kind of performance improvements we've made in the core journaling of the system. Um, so as you guys know, in Alluxio 2.0, we introduced a new type of journaling called the embedded journal. And the main benefit of the embedded journal is to be able to not rely on a third-party service, like, for example, HDFS, to store your journal. Instead, this just uses the local storage on all of the Alluxio masters in order to make a kind of distributed journal, which is able to be shared among all of the Alluxio master nodes. However, from the release of the embedded journal, we've seen more and more users kind of try this out because of various benefits, like not needing to store in an external system, or some users just, for example, are in Kubernetes and don't want to have to depend on something external that they don't really have much control over. And as we saw more usage, we saw users run into scalability bottlenecks, mainly around the number of files that could be stored in the embedded journal without causing a performance slowdown, or in the worst cases, like the system itself would not be functional after a certain number of files. So we took a very close look at the internal algorithm, and we've actually replaced parts of the underlying library that we use to implement the Rafts protocol. And then now we've kind of validated that the newer algorithm and libraries is able to support up to about 1 billion files when using the embedded journal. And this is something that we think the embedded journal is definitely the way forward for Alluxio journaling. We hope that eventually all users will be using the embedded journal, and really the UFS journal, like kind of the old alternative, will become more of a legacy type of support. But we're definitely in the 2.4 release looking to see more users pick up the embedded journal, as well as some of the old users being able to use the embedded journal again because of the scalability challenges that were addressed. And the last thing I wanted to go over were the new DevOps monitoring and tools that we've added. So the major one, of course, is the data orchestration hub, which we talked about earlier. That's kind of one central console for the operator to interact with the Alluxio system. But aside from that, we've also made several other improvements. One is on the Alluxio UI itself. We've added a lot of cluster-wide metrics in order to help kind of the administrator better understand what's going on in the cluster. So this includes things like the total read and write throughput across the entire cluster. So the operator can understand, oh, the Alluxio system is actually performing like a huge amount of I/O for me right now, or something like the Alluxio system is pretty idle, so we could potentially like put more load on the system. It also includes the total number of metadata operations per mount. And this can be really helpful to visualize exactly how many operations were kind of short-circuited or been able to serve directly from the Alluxio master. And serving from the Alluxio master has a lot of benefits. For example, the latency is going to generally be much lower, as well as in some cases, when your underlying storage is, for example, S3 or GCS, those storages actually will charge for metadata operations. So by looking at how many you were able to short circuit through the Alluxio master, you can kind of calculate actually like how much just like total cost you've saved. The other improvement is a utility for log collection. So we've actually had this collect info command, I think for maybe 2 or so releases, but in 2.4 we've added a lot of new functionality in terms of the types of logs that are being gathered from just running various Alluxio diagnostic commands. Like it'll automatically check like your journal files, see how many journal files you have, and put that into a file, so that when you run this collect info command, you'll be able to look into like what was the state of the system when you ran that command. It also includes new metrics like the JVM heap metrics, as well as JStacks for the Alluxio master to see what was going on in the master at the time you called the collect info. So in all, like the new collect info command has a lot more functionality, and it's a lot more convenient in terms of just being able to run this, and it'll gather all of the various logs that you could potentially need for troubleshooting across your cluster. And the last improvement here is around being able to have the system passively monitor itself whenever it detects any long pauses. Because Alluxio is running in a JVM, one of the more notorious issues with JVMs is sometimes it decides to stop the world. And generally it stops the world in order to do garbage collection, because it needs to make sure no one is modifying anything as it deletes kind of the unused memory to free up more space in the heap. But we've seen actually other cases where the JVM will also pause, whether that's waiting for like external disk IO and things like that. But now we've added a monitor within the system to kind of passively keep an eye on if this JVM that it's been monitoring has paused for a certain period of time. And this can actually help a lot in terms of being able to pinpoint what issues were happening when, for example, like the system slows down or you see a node failure. You'll be able to get messages to say like, hey, this Alluxio worker node actually ended up pausing for 50 seconds during this period of time. And that can be crucial when debugging issues like that kind of come up sporadically. And for example, the system becomes unresponsive and it's difficult to pinpoint why. Okay, so that was kind of the overview for Alluxio 2.4, but that's, I would say, like just like half of the office hour. Really, this is kind of a period of time where I would like to kind of talk to you guys and answer any questions you guys may have, whether it's around Alluxio 2.4 features or just general questions you guys have about the Alluxio system. And of course, keep an eye out for the Alluxio Data Orchestration Hub webinar that should be coming up soon, and you guys can hear more about the functionalities of the new management plane that we're putting out.
Hey Calvin, there are a few questions in the channel. In the chat box. So one question is about what is the summit about?
Yeah, sure. So I guess Ben, I can't actually see the questions that you're talking about, but maybe you can read them to me.
Okay.
But to answer the first question about what is the summit about, I'm guessing you're referring to the Alluxio Data Orchestration Summit, which is coming up in December. That is like you can think of it as an annual summit that we're having. Last year you can take a look at like the presentations from last year, but it's basically a venue where a lot of community members as well as users of Alluxio share the various use cases, as well as some of the core developers in the community share what's coming up in the Alluxio roadmap, as well as what cool features they're working on.
Cool. The next question is from Baolong. Actually, Baolong is our PMC and a core contributor. And one of the improvements, integration coming in 2.4, which is the integration with Ozone, is contributed by Baolong. He's from Tencent. It's a pretty late night in China right now. So the question is, can I use IP to access Alluxio worker?
Yeah, so in terms of the networking setup, whether or not you're able to refer to the Alluxio worker by IP, I think it's going to be up to like how you guys configure your network topology. From the Alluxio system itself, there is one configuration value called like the worker hostname, and you can actually name that anything you want. Generally, we recommend that it's named after the host name, but you could, for example, name it the IP address instead.
I think Baolong posted one a issue in GitHub channel. Like maybe you can just take that offline look at the issue there. Yeah, so about the summit, we're going to launch the summit in December, and there are already a lot of exciting talks from like Facebook, from Google, from AWS, Microsoft, and many like Tencent, also Alibaba, and many exciting use cases, and also their thoughts, their insights into cloud native environment ecosystem and how Alluxio or some other adjacent computation or storage play their roles in this ecosystem. I'm very excited about the topic for this conference. It's going to be a 2-day event, and it's free. It's online, so feel free to join us. And or if you have any good ideas, feel free to submit a proposal, and we will take a look and start from there. Any other questions? Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, in case you have further follow-up, always go to Slack channel. Let me just put a Slack channel in here, and you can always access me or Calvin in Slack channel. Yeah, I just posted the Slack channel address in the chat box. Cool.
All right, awesome. Thank you
yeah.
guys for joining the office hour today.
Cool. Thank you, Calvin.